Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is a bittersweet moment as we arrive at session five, the final installment of the Proposal Development Playbook. Again, my name is Steve Robichaud, and over the last four sessions, we've built a foundation from the ground up, covering registrations, submission portals, the sting of declinations, and the excitement of award acceptance. But as any veteran researcher will tell you, the proposal lifecycle doesn't really have a finish line. Today, we are focusing on prospect research and moving on. It answers the question sort of, we've come this far. What else are we going to do? Right? So we are going to explore how to keep your research momentum alive and well, how to leverage powerful funding databases like PivotRP, InfoEdSpin, and Candid, and how to think creatively about team science. So let's dive into our final session together. One of the most important lessons I've learned in a decade of research administration is that successful grantsmanship is not about chasing money for a single isolated project, as we've mentioned in previous sessions. Rather, again, it is about building a long-term strategy. So again, we must adopt a resilience mindset. Just as we discussed in session three, your mantra must continue to be, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Every proposal you submit, regardless of the outcome, builds your institutional readiness. It increases your team's research competence and ensures that your administrative staff is ready to hit the ground running for the next cycle. So while you're between cycles, you want to stay relevant. Don't wait for a deadline to talk to the government or various agencies. Use email or phone calls to stay connected with program officers to remain engaged with their evolving agency priorities. So one of the ways that we do this to stay engaged is to find new funding prospects. So I think it's worth considering some of the tools that are available to many of you. And if it's not available to you, I think it's worth considering adopting platforms like these into your institution's budget, because it's something that is a really good investment in terms of your ability to find new opportunities, and not just new opportunities in terms of the RFPs themselves or the NOFOs or other announcements of funding, but also these platforms that I'm about to share with you to some degree also help you to find external collaborators and collaborators that are both outside of your own discipline or outside of your own specific institution, and can help leverage what you bring to the table with what they bring to the table, and then ultimately find a research opportunity that can be, the result of your partnership. So you need tools to help you both find the funding and find additional people that can help you to realize your aspirations as a researcher. I want to pause here before we go into Pivot, just to note and to state very clearly that I have no financial interest in any of these tools that I'm about to share with you, but rather I share with you these as tools that are of the normal course of a piece of what many institutions provide their Office of Sponsored Program staff and their faculty at their institutions. These are um, uh, uh, pretty common in terms of tools that are available. So it's something that I'm more than happy to share with you, even outside of these sessions, about how best to use these kinds of tools, because they're really going to improve your ability to find that right funding agency and that right opportunity, and most crucially, at the right time. So with that in mind, let's talk about the tools that can supercharge this particular search. First up is PivotRP. Uh, I like to call this a kind of global storefront, right? Because it is an expert curated source of funding opportunities worth billions of dollars across every discipline imaginable. There are many reasons why I think is a special database in this regard, or in this class of databases. And one of which is its most recent set of updates, which is something called AI-powered discovery. So it features something called Funding Advisor, which uses AI to automatically recommend grants that meet your specific researcher profile. It literally does the searching for you while you sleep, right? Or while you're not necessarily engaged in the search. One of the things about these databases is that they help you to find something when you're actively searching, but just as importantly, as we outlined here, they help to automate the search process. And so to differing degrees and with differing kinds of technologies, they provide that ability to find something that perhaps you weren't looking for actively in the moment. And Pivot certainly does that. That said, you can also use it for strategic intelligence. So by that, PIs can inform their own proposal strategy by researching historical data from over 5 million previously awarded grants to see what types of projects a funder actually prefers. So you can not only look at, in the case of Pivot, what funding opportunities are available, you can also see basically abstracts from previously awarded grants to see what kinds of projects a funder actually cares about, right? And what's their sort of history of funding. And to be clear, I think I may have misspoken in that previous sentence, but just to note, it may not be necessarily um, the abstract, but you can see, for example, some of the top line information in terms of what was the grant that was funded and what was it for, and those kinds of top line details. So you can get a sense of what a funder typically funds and where you might fit into that potential future outlay. So finally, um, Pivot is a really powerful collaboration tool. You can search millions of scholarly profiles to find potential funders based on their publication history and specific expertise. Oftentimes, these profiles are informed by there may be ORCID IDs that a faculty principal investigator has also included in their profile, so they're able to have the information of what they've previously had funded is represented there in some form in the profile. And remember that the profile itself, when you set up Pivot, it's not only those faculty profiles within your institution, but for those of us that, say, for example, I sit here at a liberal arts college, while of national scope in terms of its institution, there's only so many faculty that you can partner with at an institution of our size. So that makes this collaboration tool even more, I would say, persuasive and compelling because you can search the scholarly profiles from other institutions within the Pivot network, which is really truly both national and international. So that's something to really keep in mind that it's not only a funding discovery tool, it's a collaborator discovery tool. So in addition to Pivot, let's think about another funding opportunity that I have some experience in, and that many institutions still use. It's from a company called InfoEd International, and it's called SPIN. And it's sometimes considered the most widely available funding opportunities database. The scale of spend is really quite remarkable. It tracks, roughly speaking, and this is based on some of what they've put out in the past, something like 40,000 active funding opportunities from more than 10,000 sponsors globally, including governments, foundations, corporate sponsors. So whether you're looking for sort of a standard research grant or a fellowship or a training opportunity, Spin Scope covers all disciplines in the US and around the world. The data here isn't just scraped from the web, it is maintained and quality checked by a trained editorial staff to ensure that your eligibility criteria and deadlines are accurate. One thing I want to note too is this idea of smarts automation. So this tool allows you to set up daily or weekly alerts for different opportunities, and it's delivered directly to your inbox, right? That's something that Pivot does as well, I should note. So this is an increasingly standard function across this class of funding database, but just note that this is something that InfoEd Spin does pretty well. So it's something to keep in mind as you think about what's available out there. So as we continue on InfoEd Spin, just wanted to note a couple things as well. So let's think about how you actually use it, right? So it features something called precise searchability, but basically through a powerful text searching engine and an extensive keyboard thesaurus that helps you drill down into niche interest areas. So remember, the task here is whether it's Spin or Pivot or another funding database, they need to have their own set of um, both limits, but also ways in which they organize their searches by topic area as a way to more easily find opportunities that reflect what you're planning to do. And so remember that the federal government, let's just say, even though SPIN offers funding opportunities from both the federal government, but also elsewhere in other sectors of society. But in terms of the federal government, remember that the taxonomy of the federal government, the way it's organized, doesn't always lend itself to an easy search. That what you're doing in terms of your research, uh, it may not just be made available at, say, if you're an education researcher, it might be at the Department of Education in terms of an opportunity that you might want to go after, but you may have something that's available in another department or another executive agency or another independent agency. It may be available in an opportunity that isn't as easily discoverable as it may be when you use a database like this. So this database will help you to use other methods of searching to find something that will be of equal value to you. So think of it that way. It's again, it's a way of searching, but in a way that can best use your very valuable time. Let me conclude at least this section regarding spin, regarding customization. Okay, so that's something too that given that faculty members uh, and the research enterprise generally is really quite diverse, and your areas of interest will diverge um, broadly and sharply depending on which faculty members you're looking at in terms of the ones that might be a part of your team. Um, and so I think the funding databases that are out there are trying their best to allow you to customize what you're searching for and to be able to do things like, not only save those search parameters, but bookmark opportunities for interests, opportunities of interest, pardon me, and use real-time things like currency conversion, for example, if you're funding looking for international grants, right? So you're able to find ways to basically, again, when you're making that analysis of is your the mission of your project or your program aligning with the mission of the funder, you're able to use these tools to customize your search so that you're looking through and finding the proverbial needle in a haystack without having to look through the entire haystack. It's a way of saving time that's really helpful, I think. And so your Office of Sponsored Programs team, this may fall into the line of somebody who's specifically their title might be prospect researcher, or they might be a staff member that focuses on proposal development or sometimes called research development. They'll be able to use these tools to help you, again, utilize your time wisely to find that opportunity. So that being said, I also wanted to, even though we're focusing mostly on questions of the federal government in terms of finding opportunities, I did want to give some focus to the private foundation space. So there was there is a tool that was once called Foundation Directory Online. It now has a new name called Candid. And Candid is a tool that, if your research tends to be focused more on, say, the social sector, right? Nonprofit organizations that have some sort of social function, oftentimes that funding opportunity will be represented in Candid. And Candid, again, is a comprehensive database, but it really helps you find opportunities in ways that might be difficult if you didn't have a database like this. So let's give one example beyond not just tax records that we'll go into in a moment, but I did want to make mention of Candid in the past, and I believe it's still the case, will allow you to find an opportunity based on what they call geographic focus rather than the geography itself. So what do I mean by that? That means that when you find an opportunity through a funder, one of your screenings as you do internally is, am I eligible for this opportunity? And you want to be searching for something that you're eligible in terms of your geography, like where you sit. And oftentimes, depending on what sector of civil society we're talking about in terms of an opportunity that may be made available for grant submissions, these opportunities through private foundation may be limited to, say, all institutions of higher education in, say, Pennsylvania, right? or it may be the area that is typically, at least where I sit here in the Delaware Valley, it may be opportunities that are only available to institutions that sit within New Jersey, Pennsylvania, or Delaware. So again, Candid helps you to find that opportunity that may sit physically even elsewhere, like not necessarily in your region or area, but they may have some specific interest in where you sit, where your institution sits, what's your focus, right? And so Candid can help you find those opportunities that maybe a little bit harder to find, but again, that you can find that your mission of what you're looking to achieve aligns with the mission of the funder. And sometimes that mission has a geographic focus. So I like to mention that in the case of Candid as well. But let's talk about the way Candid makes use of tax records. So for um, uh, any private foundation or independent nonprofit organization, when they submit their tax forms for the year, it's the document that's generated is something called the IRS Form 990. For a private foundation, it was, I believe it's still called the IRS Form 990-PF for a private foundation. And the 990 is really is really when you learn more about it, it is a wealth of information on learning what is the nature of this funder that you're looking at, what have they given before, who sits on their board, what have they given in the past programmatically. It can be a wealth of information. And so what Candid does is provide that information in a much more searchable format and a much more easily retrievable format. But that's sort of one of the standard bases of data. And so that's something where Candid can help you find that data through finding the direct piece of information, that is to say the IRS 990, but also helping arrange it in such a way that you can search for information that's based in those forms. So it's good to think about the IRS Form 990 and how Candid actually um, helps you to learn information in that space. In addition, you can also access many different profiles from about 1.9 million organizations to identify key decision makers and analyze those financial trends. Uh, so again, whether it's through the IRS Form 990 or through these profiles of each funder, you can find really relevant information that can help you decide not only are you eligible for this opportunity, but just as importantly, if you are competitive for this opportunity based on the unique set of circumstances that you find yourself in your institution. They also offer what they call funding maps. So these provide visual tools to track over $180 billion in annual grant dollars. This lets you see exactly who is funding what in your specific geographic region. So again, I come back to the idea of like, this concept of geographic focus, and they find ways to map that out so you can see what's available, and just as crucially, what may not be available and what you can expect hopefully in the future. So I'm going to pause before we talk about team science. I want to actually pause and look at some of these databases that I talked about. And let's first start with PivotRP. So I'm going to sign in with my single sign-on credentials, in this case from Swarthmore College. So let me pull that up. And I've already signed in with my SSO. Oh, actually, I haven't, pardon me. But let's go ahead and do that. And as we log in, you're going to see this front page here. And this front page is oftentimes, as you can see here, what Pivot does is provide a kind of co-branding. So you can see the branding of your institution, but also some images that are reflective of your institution. But this is the standard look of your homepage. So very quickly, I want to go through some of the ways in which Pivot sort of stands out, I believe. And I think it's important to keep in mind. So first, I'll turn your attention here to the top sections here. I'm going to focus more on these four elements. So funding, researcher profiles, conferences where you might actually present some of the research that's generated from a grant, and then of course this database of awarded grants. So when it comes to funding, let's take a look here. And what I like to show people who are new to Pivot is this funding wheel. And this is a way to arrange the amount of funding that's available. And right now, and universally on Pivot, about 180 $8 billion is available from various sources for various purposes. And each of these colors, as you can see, are for a specific area that they have deemed is a specific section of funding. So it gets pretty granular the further out you get in these concentric circles. So not only are we thinking about questions of STEM, but also computer science and then disciplines within there as I sort of move out here. So you find the sliver that focuses on networking. But again, that's quite a bit of money, $575.55 million for just that section alone. And when you're interested in something like that, for example, now, in this setting, let's think about perhaps a different area, say social sciences. So let's go around here. So we have social sciences, and then we have other areas of interest. And then it could be criminology, right? And then there's even more specific areas of interest. So, but let's look at criminology just as a helpful first step. So as we look here, in this specific instance for criminology, we have a number of ways in which we can uh, tailor our search. We've already sort of tailored it in some specific ways up here, mostly when it comes to the discipline. But then you can also look on this left-hand side where you see the various um, kinds of funding opportunities and the different dimensions of funding. So for our purpose, we can go through and you see up here 276 research results, and I think it's worth reflecting on. That's a pretty high number. So if you want to spend a little more time in a more focused fashion, you can sort of limit it by, again, other ways in which you stand out and are unique. So are you looking at, say, let's say we're focusing on research, right? If that's the case, then we lower our research results to 114, right? Um, and I should say research funding results, pardon me, just to be clear. But then if we want to look at specific applicant types, most of us come from an academic institution, but they may be of a different type here. But let's just do that just as an example. And then we further lower our research funding results to 58 in this case. And then as we go down, you can also look at other dimensions as well. And I won't spend too much time going down further, but for example, as you see these numbers here, if you were to click on these, you would further go down in terms of the number of funding opportunities that are available in terms of this case, career stage. And again, you can find things that are much more tailored to what you're planning to do, in this case, in the field of criminology. And so you can play with this to find that opportunity that is of interest. Now, let's take a look here. I'm going to actually look at something that is from the US federal government. So in this case, let's take a look at um, something from, let's just do an NIH example here. So this is something where if we click on this, we'll see where we came to this from. So we went to our funding discovery platform, search results, and then a funding opportunity detail, right? And that's what this is. It's a detailed sort of first record, if you will, of this funding opportunity. It gives top line information, all designed to make sure that you're looking at something with again, a better use of your time that's more focused. And so you can see the amount that's available, the upper limits, the different types of applicants that can apply, what stage in your career that you can apply to under this. So that's from mid-career, or rather from established in your field to mid to early career. Where is your activity location? And then institutionally, what institutions are eligible. So here, higher education institutions are what they're looking to receive applications from. I want to also take your bring your gaze down to where it says keywords. Just like many other databases, using keywords can really be helpful in terms of ensuring that you're finding the right opportunities at the right time frame. So here we have these keywords that help you to understand how Pivot utilizes its own nomenclature to categorize this. And so to the extent that you familiarize yourselves with how Pivot in this case organizes this opportunity, you'll be able to find other opportunities that may reflect what you're doing here. And then so on down the line, we have deadlines that are important to think about in terms of new or a revised proposal and things of that nature. So let's go back up. And the final thing that I'll mention in terms of the funding opportunity detail is to note this area where it says potential collaborators and those from outside of your institutions. you'll see if we go outside of your institution, right? You can take a look here, and as it comes up, you'll see based on this opportunity, you can find other partners that may be of interest to you in not only the United States, but around the world, and who are interested in a variety of topics that can complement what you're planning to do. And I think it's worth reflecting on, again, not only the funding opportunity that you're working on, but who might be interested to work with you on this work. And let me finally note this opportunity, this function that I think is really one of Pivot's calling cards, where it says see more opportunities like this. So as you click on this, you'll be able to see various opportunities. Now, this is a fairly large um, list of results. So again, you go through your left-hand side here and try to winnow this down. But you can see opportunities that are in some way, some form or fashion, similar to what you're looking at here, right? So that's kind of a broader review of what looking for funding on Pivot looks like. Let me also look at these researcher profiles, right? And I won't go into any specific one other than to show um, uh, 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 here what a set of researcher profiles, pardon me, would look like. You can see here these different uh, profiles here for some of our professors here at the college. But then what I'll do is show you mine, so you can see what my profile kind of looks like, which will be far more spare compared to a faculty member. But you can see, we have some backgrounds and associations here. This would be far more inclusive in terms of your private grants and other publications, and it'll provide funding matches based on this specific profile. And then also, because Pivot is owned by Clarivate and Clarivate owns Web of Science, you can see citation metrics for a given researcher. So this is kind of the format I like to show faculty members as well. So that being said, let's look at some of the conferences that may be available to you. So again, these are organized based on discipline. And so if we focus on, say, questions of social science here, it can be in a variety of areas. So I'm going to look at public administration just as an example. And you can see various conferences that are coming up. And you can see if we were interested in, say, this opportunity. You can see, much like we did with the funding opportunity details, there is a detailed section that gives you top line information for this conference. And this can be something that you can incorporate on your future dissemination of the results that you receive from the funding and also the grant that you actually carry out. So it's something to keep in mind. And then as we move forward, I mentioned earlier this bevy, or not bevy, I'm sorry, but this database of awarded grants. So you have a number of funders, both domestic and international. I want to go down to, let's take a look at the National Science Foundation, just as a kind of hallmark example. And here, there's quite a number of results, but you can, again, look at the year, and you can see, you can advance your search, refine your search based on what is of interest. Now, if we're interested to just take a look at what the form looks like, you'll see here, it's just some details in terms of how much was given and then the reward itself, right? And you can see information that's helpful based on whatever it is you're looking at. So with that, there's more to go into for Pivot, but I invite you to take a look at it if your institution provides it. And if not, it's something to think about as well. But let's look at some of the other databases that I mentioned. So here with Spin, I will say that Swarthmore does not have, to my knowledge, a Spin account. But just to note, here's the website info@global.com, and then you can see the various products therein. I think now it's called the Spin Global Suite. And so you can see some of the features here. I won't go further into it, but just note that this is available, and a search would look much like this. You can see how it's similar to Pivot in that way, but you can see the opportunity title, and it'll have its own section of top line information for a given funding opportunity. And again, it has many of the same functions in terms of save searches and funding alerts and other emails that you can have provided to you as a way to stay on top of um, the proposal development life cycle. And then we'll sort of end our tour of funding opportunity databases with Candid. This is more for, again, nonprofit funding by way of particularly private foundation funding. And you can see some of the top line information here as well. And it's worth reflecting on what this offers to you in terms of finding opportunities that may not be in the Federal Register, but in fact are found at the various forms of civil society that we call in the US nonprofits, but specifically private foundations that I will note too, as you look through uh, um, these sections within Candid, it's worth remembering that the through IRS regulation IRS the IRS code, I believe, there's a requirement. It's called the 5% rule. So basically, if you find the assets of a given private foundation, they are required each year to give up to about 5% of their total assets in terms of funding and making it available to other folks. That may be interested in their mission. So that's one area when you look at their IRS Form 990. Another data point that would be useful for you to think about is in that funder, how much do they have in their assets, which determines how much they're willing to give, which can give you a sense of how reasonable it might be to actually obtain funding from those entities. So again, I won't repeat myself in terms of the functions here, but they are similar to what I provide in terms of Pivot. And so it's worth reflecting on having your institution invest in something like this in the future that may be of use. Okay, so let's round out not only this presentation, but also the series generally. So I want to talk about in our final section here a concept that we refer to as team science. So how do you build a research alliance moving forward? So as we look to the future, we have to talk about team science. This isn't just a buzzword. It is a formal discipline of strategically forming multidisciplinary teams to prepare, submit, and eventually execute large-scale research grants. Again, when we talk about team science, this is what we're talking about. It's the ways in which you're putting your not only research team together, but your proposal team as you prepare and submit this kind of project. As you find prospects in your databases, right, the ones that I shared with you are a couple of key examples, but there are others out there. You need to ask, is this a one-person project or do I need a team to be competitive, right? And so again, you can use the profiles in, say, Pivot RP to discover and invite potential collaborators from across the country or around the globe who fill the gaps in your own expertise. Building these alliances early makes your proposal much more attractive to federal reviewers. So it's worth reflecting on the scope of your team. So it may be that your proposed idea has promise, but your previous reviews on a given submission, it may just be the case that you need to enhance the team that you're including here. And so um, databases like Pivot, InfoEdSpin, and Candid can help you to find those teammates as well. To wrap up our final session, remember that in team science, communication is key. So before you even put pen to paper, you must communicate both internally and externally with stakeholders to align your project goals with the funder's agenda. Again, that's a key concept. What you plan to do, you want to make sure it's what the funder wants to do as well, broadly speaking. Demonstrating a well-organized team structure, again, it proves your competence in the area of research to reviewers. It shows them that you have done sufficient administrative planning necessary to handle the money and the science from day one. So it's, again, just to emphasize this point at the very end of our presentation today, I just want to note that we're thinking in terms of those opportunities that we can go out and find and hopefully submit an application to reinforce and to improve what you plan to do as a researcher. But again, it's increasingly the case that you want to think about not just your own aspirations and ambitions, but trying to incorporate that as a broader team that you can really get further than just with one set of, in this case, principal investigators. So I invite you to think about how you can be creative in this space in terms of building out your team. So with that, it's been a real privilege sharing this proposal development playbook with you. I hope these tools and strategies empower you to secure the funding your research deserves. I thank you for your time, and I wish you the very best of luck in your future submissions.